You're just not enough for me, Noah." Her voice trembled like she was doing me a favor, like the words spilling from her lips weren't acid burning through the last of what we were. Emma didn't look away, not this time. She looked me square in the face, still wearing the necklace I bought her on our second anniversary, still holding the phone where she had his name saved under future I. "He can give me things you never could. Security, luxury, ambition." Ambition. That one stung. Not because I didn't have it, but because I did. She just didn't see it. Nobody did. Not yet. I stood in our crumbling studio apartment, the one we used to call home, with its leaky window and walls thin enough to hear the neighbors fighting through the night. Emma had stopped believing in dreams the day I said I was quitting my job at the agency to build my own software company. She laughed then. "Noah, you're not that guy. You're sweet, but you'll never be him." I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I just nodded and watched her walk out the door with her designer duffel, already bought with his money. That was the last time I saw Emma Bennett in person, until 4 years later, when I walked into a conference room wearing a tailored Armani suit, shook hands with the board of Omnitech Corp., and realized the man sitting across the table was the same smug executive she had left me for, and she was on his arm. Let me rewind. 4 years earlier, I slept on a mattress on the floor, lived off instant ramen, and coded until my fingers went numb. I sold my car, I rented out my blood plasma, I pitched to dozens of investors, rejected, ignored, humiliated. But I kept going. The world doesn't give second chances to guys like me. It hands you one shot, and most of the time, it's a blank. But mine was a bullet. I called it Sable AI, an adaptive security protocol that could protect, self-correct, and evolve in real time across multi-layered cloud infrastructure. Sounds boring? Not if you're a Fortune 500 with a $2 billion cybersecurity hole in your firewall. When the first contract came in, just $250K, I didn't buy a car, I didn't celebrate, I reinvested, rebuilt, rewired. 6 months later, Sable AI signed its first $10 million license, then a full acquisition offer, $180 million. I said no. They thought I was crazy. Emma would have agreed. But I had a bigger plan. I founded Eravos Holdings, a shadow company that quietly acquired stakes in everything from fintech platforms to logistics systems. I was the ghost behind the curtain, the ghost building an empire. I didn't want the fame. I wanted the power. Present day. The irony wasn't lost on me when I saw the invite in my inbox. Omnitech Corp was courting a strategic partner for a full digital security overhaul. They didn't know that Eravos owned 37% of their infrastructure already. They didn't know I was the guy they'd be pitching to in the boardroom. They didn't know the man in the black suit with the calm voice and icy eyes was once just Noah Parker, the man Emma left for a shinier life. And she was on his arm. Let me rewind. 4 years earlier, I slept on a mattress on the floor, lived off instant ramen, and coded until my fingers went numb. I sold my car, I rented out my blood plasma, I pitched to dozens of investors, rejected, ignored, humiliated. But I kept going. The world doesn't give second chances to guys like me. It hands you one shot, and most of the time, it's a blank. But mine was a bullet. I called it Sable AI, an adaptive security protocol that could protect, self-correct, and evolve in real time across multi-layered cloud infrastructure. Sounds boring? Not if you're a Fortune 500 with a $2 billion cybersecurity hole in your firewall. When the first contract came in, just $250K, I didn't buy a car, I didn't celebrate, I reinvested, rebuilt, rewired. 6 months later, Sable AI signed its first $10 million license, then a full acquisition offer, $180 million. I said no. They thought I was crazy. Emma would have agreed. But I had a bigger plan. I founded Eravos Holdings, a shadow company that quietly acquired stakes in everything from fintech platforms to logistics systems. I was the ghost behind the curtain, the ghost building an empire. I didn't want the fame. I wanted the power. present day. The irony wasn't lost on me when I saw the invite in my inbox. Omnitech Corp was courting a strategic partner for a full digital security overhaul. They didn't know that Eravos owned 37% of their infrastructure already. They didn't know I was the guy they'd be pitching to in the boardroom. They didn't know the man in the black suit with the calm voice and icy eyes was once just Noah Parker, the man Emma left for a shinier life. When I walked into that room, I didn't scan for her. I didn't need to. I felt her presence before I even saw her. She was still beautiful, just stiffer, like someone afraid to breathe too deeply in silk. She blinked when she saw me, twice. Noah? Her voice cracked. He, Chase Mallory, her executive fiancé turned husband, didn't recognize me. Not yet. I smiled, tight, controlled. Good afternoon, I said. Shall we begin? This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about ownership. And the man she left me for was now about to beg me for funding. Let's see how ambitious I am now. The meeting dragged longer than it should have. Chase Mallory paced through his presentation, pointing at graphs and talking about cyber agility and risk containment. His voice was confident, but his eyes kept darting towards mine, searching for approval that never came. I gave him none. Instead, I watched Emma. Not overtly, just enough to notice the way she kept her hands clasped tight in her lap, the way her gaze kept flickering in my direction. She looked good, too good, like someone who curated her image down to the last eyelash. But underneath the designer polish, she was unsettled. She didn't expect me to be the man in this room with all the power. When Chase wrapped up, he smiled at me like he had just delivered a golden egg. "I'll think about it," I said. He blinked. The smile faltered. "With respect," he replied, tone cooler now, "we're talking to other security providers as well." "You should," I answered. I stood, buttoning my suit, the sound echoing in the quiet room like a gavel. I gathered my notes, nodded at the board, and made my way to the door. Her voice stopped me in the hall. "Noah, can we talk?" I paused but didn't turn, just kept walking. She followed, past the glass offices, past the elevators, into the corridor that opened out to the city skyline, where the buzz of traffic below couldn't reach us. She stood beside me, her heels silent on the carpet. "You disappeared. You told me to. You didn't even fight for me. You don't fight for someone already walking away." She hesitated, her eyes softened. "You look different." "So do you." She shifted slightly, smoothing her dress. "Is this about revenge?" "If it were, you'd already know." "Then why are you here?" "Because your husband's company is bleeding, because he's out of ideas, and because the only person who can save him is the man you left." Her breath caught. "Maybe," I added, stepping closer, "because I wanted you to see it, see what you threw away." I didn't wait for her to speak. I turned and walked back to the elevator. That night, my phone rang. Chase. "No boardroom," he said, "just us. Let's talk man to man." I told him I'd send a car. We met at a restaurant with white tablecloths and old jazz playing softly in the corners. He arrived in a suit that cost too much and still didn't fit right. "Emma told me who you were," he said after the wine was poured. "She said you two had a thing. That's one word for it. She also said you weren't the kind of guy to hold grudges. She must be thinking of someone else." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Look," he said, leaning in, "whatever happened back then, let's keep it professional. We need your tech. You name the terms." "Any terms?" "Within reason." "I want control. Eravos absorbs Omnitech. You stay on as CEO in title, but I call the shots." His smile disappeared. "That's not a partnership." "No, it's survival." He stared at me. I stared back. "You're bluffing," he said. I didn't answer. "You'd let us go under?" I reached for my wine glass. "You'll say yes," I said, "because you've seen the numbers, because your board is desperate, and because I've already got half your infrastructure under my thumb. This is just making it official." He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he nodded once. We walked out together. The valet pulled up his car first. He turned to me and extended his hand. No hard feelings? I shook it. None at all. I watched his taillights fade into the night. Tomorrow, I'd own the company he thought he ran. And Emma? She'd be there to witness it all. The paperwork arrived 2 days later. Chase's legal team tried to dress it up with language like strategic consolidation and equity-driven partnership, but anyone with half a brain could see what it was: surrender with a signature. I read through every clause myself. I didn't hand it off to my counsel. I wanted to feel every line of control shifting into my hands, every whereas and heretofore that put me 1 inch closer to owning the same company they said I'd never be worthy of. By noon, the contract was finalized. All that remained was the signing. We met in a private conference room on the top floor of the Omnitech Tower. Chase sat on one end of the long walnut table. I took the other. Emma was there too. She sat next to him, silent, her eyes trained on the glass of water in front of her. Chase cleared his throat. Let's just get this over with. I slid the papers toward him. He didn't read them again. He just picked up the pen. But before he signed, I spoke. There's one more condition. His hand froze. I want her out of the boardroom. Emma's head jerked up. What? No offense, I said, turning to her, but this is business, and you're a distraction. Chase looked at me, then at her. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Doubt, maybe. Hesitation. Emma's my wife. She's also not on your board. Never has been. This is between decision makers. Silence. Then Chase nodded toward the door. Wait outside. Emma didn't move. Chase? It's fine. Just give us a minute. Her eyes locked with mine as she stood, slow and reluctant. She didn't speak. She didn't slam the door. She just laughed. Chase signed. And just like that, it was done. The empire he thought he built was now mine. I didn't stay for the champagne the assistants brought in. I didn't pose for the ceremonial photo. I left before anyone could clap. When I reached the elevator, Emma was waiting. You humiliated me in there, she said. No, I reminded you who I am. She stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. You think owning his company means you've won? That it fixes what we had? I'm not trying to fix anything, Emma. I'm just collecting what I earned. Her eyes searched my face, maybe looking for something soft that still existed beneath the layers of sharp suits and power. But I'd buried softness years ago, alongside who I used to be. You've changed. I leaned in. So have you. But the difference is, I like who I became. I walked away. By evening, the press release had gone live. Eravos Holdings acquires controlling stake in Omnitech Corp. Industry blogs buzzed. Stock forums lit up. Analysts speculated. Some called it genius. Others called it hostile. But they all knew one thing. There was a new player at the table. That night, I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows in my penthouse apartment, sipping bourbon, while the skyline blinked like a city on fire. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. You think this is over? Her voice, still sharp, still venom-laced. It's only just beginning, I said. And then I hung up. There was a time when I would have lost sleep over a call like that, when her voice would have haunted me for nights. But now, I had meetings with her husband's board of directors in the morning. Let her burn. I had empires to build. The Omnitech boardroom smelled different now. Power has a scent, like polished wood, quiet air conditioning, and fear barely masked by cologne. I could feel it in the way they greeted me, stiff-backed, corporate smiles too tight to be genuine. I took my place at the head of the table. Not the guest chair, the chair. 12 directors sat before me, 11 men, 1 woman. All of them knew what had happened. Some resented it. Most feared it. A few already admired it. Let's begin, I said, and silence swept over the room like fog. Chase sat 3 seats down, no longer at the center of attention. He wore the same navy suit he always wore for investor calls, but it looked looser on him now, like even his clothes were trying to retreat. I flipped open the portfolio in front of me. First order of business, restructuring. Murmurs, side glances. One of the older directors, Stanton, cleared his throat. Mr. Parker, we were under the impression that integration would be gradual. It will be, I said, for those who can keep up.
The murmurs died instantly.
Effective immediately, I continued, departmental budgets will be audited for redundancy. Non-performing staff will be phased out. All vendor contracts are suspended pending Erebos review. Another voice, this time from a younger director. That could destabilize our Q3 operations. Better a shake than a collapse. I turned to Chase. Wouldn't you agree? He stared at me, jaw tight. If this is personal. It's not, I interrupted. If it were personal, you wouldn't be sitting here. I let the silence stretch long enough for them to feel it. I'm not here to gloat. I'm here to clean house. No one spoke again. After the meeting, Chase cornered me in the executive hallway. You're humiliating me, he hissed. No, I said, calm as stone. You're doing that all on your own. You got what you wanted, the company, the board. What more do you need? I stepped closer. To show you what real ambition looks like. He flinched, just a little. That's when I knew I had him. Emma was waiting for me in the lobby, not by coincidence. You didn't have to gut him like that, she said. I walked past her. He's still breathing. Noah. I turned. You chose him, Emma. You married him. Don't come to me now because you don't like the version of him that showed up after the fairy tale ended. She took a breath. I didn't know you'd become this. You didn't want me to become anything. For a second, she looked like she might cry, but she didn't. She turned, heels clicking against the marble as she walked out of my view. That night, I reviewed the company's financials. Omnitech had been bleeding quietly for years. Excess spending, bloated payroll, shady contracts. They'd masked it with stock buybacks and PR spends. By midnight, I'd drawn up a 90-day turnaround plan. It wasn't just about taking over. It was about proving that I could take a dying empire and breathe fire into its lungs. My phone buzzed, a message from my assistant. Tomorrow's media interview confirmed. CNN Tech. Perfect. Time to go public. Let them all watch the man they dismissed rewrite every rule. I wore black for the interview. Not the shiny, overpriced kind the old version of me used to admire in shop windows. No. This suit was tailored in Milan, hand-stitched, subtle, quiet, like money that doesn't have to scream. The CNN Tech studio was smaller than I expected. The producer greeted me with a wide smile and a clipboard full of expectations. You'll be on with Lydia Vance. She wants to open with the merger, then move to your background and close with your vision. Fine, I said. She handed me a mic. I didn't need a pep talk. I already knew what I wanted to say. Lydia Vance had the kind of presence that made men trip over themselves, not me. I saw the calculation in her eyes the second she shook my hand, always hunting for a headline. We sat. Lights came on, cameras rolled. She smiled wide. Today on Tech Titans, we're joined by Noah Parker, CEO of Erebos Holdings and, as of this week, the new majority stakeholder in Omnitech Corp. I nodded once. Lydia leaned in. Some are calling your acquisition the most unexpected power play of the year. What would you call it? I smiled. I'd call it overdue. She blinked. That wasn't the polished answer she expected. And what do you say to critics who claim your takeover was more personal than professional? I didn't hesitate. They're right. There was a flicker behind her eyes, excitement. Care to elaborate? I built something from nothing, alone, rejected, mocked, even by people who said they loved me. This merger is personal, because it proves the ones who left were wrong. You're referring to your past relationship with Emma Bennett, now married to Chase Mallory? I paused, just long enough to let the tension bloom. I don't refer to the past, I said. I replace it. Lydia practically purred. And what's next for the man who rewrote the script? I met the camera dead on. Redemption. Not for me, for the company I now own. I'm here to burn the rot and rebuild from the ashes. By the time I left the studio, the clip was already viral. Noah Parker's cold-blooded truth bomb on CNN. He said what? The savage CEO clip you have to watch? This isn't business, this is war. People loved it. Investors, commentators, strangers on the internet. They called me the Dark Horse CEO, the silent tycoon, the X with a vengeance. And Emma? She saw it. I knew because she called that night. "You're enjoying this," she said without a hello. "You watched the interview. You humiliated us." "No, I told the truth, maybe for the first time in public." "You're making this personal." "You made it personal the moment you chose his wallet over my future." She didn't respond for a moment. Then, quieter, "Is this what you wanted all along?" "No," I said. "What I wanted was to be enough for you. And when I wasn't, I decided I'd be too much for everyone else." The line went quiet. Then a soft, trembling breath. And a whisper. "You've changed. You're repeating yourself." Click. She hung up. I stared at my reflection in the penthouse window. The man who looked back wasn't angry. He wasn't bitter. He was calm, dangerous, focused. I didn't need her anymore. But she'd keep needing me. Because the man she married now answered to me. The invitation came wrapped in ivory cardstock, sealed with real wax, Mallory style. Pretentious, overdone, insecure. It reeked of someone trying to reclaim control. "You're cordially invited to an exclusive Omnitech Investor Appreciation Dinner, hosted by Mr. and Mrs. Chase Mallory. Saturday, 7 p.m., the Gilded Swan." I stared at the envelope for a long time before tossing it on my desk. This wasn't about gratitude. This was a stage. And I was expected to show up and clap politely while Chase played king in a crumbling kingdom. My assistant knocked once and entered. "Do you want me to decline?" I shook my head. "I'll go." The Gilded Swan was elegance on steroids, gold trim, crystal chandeliers, a six-piece jazz band playing soft Sinatra in the background. The kind of place where people went to be envied. I arrived alone. No date, no entourage. Just a black suit, a tailored coat, and silence so sharp it cut through the crowd. Heads turned. Everyone knew who I was now. The man who bought the company. The man who didn't flinch on CNN. The man who used to eat instant ramen and now made headlines with every sentence. Chase greeted me with a forced grin and a champagne flute. "Noah, glad you came." "I like watching people lie to my face," I replied smoothly. He laughed too loud, then motioned to the dining hall. "Come, let's get you seated." I took my place at the long oak table. Name cards and wine glasses glistened under candlelight. Emma sat across from me. Hair swept up, diamond earrings, red lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Noah," she said, like it was a question and a threat. "Emma." She tilted her head. "You're alone." "I always have been," I said, "but now it's by choice." She flinched, just barely. Dinner was a performance. Toasts, handshakes, a slideshow of Omnitech's future vision led by Chase with all the charisma of a falling stock chart. Then came the surprise. "And to close," Chase said, standing with a raised glass, "I'd like to introduce the man who's made this future possible, Noah Parker." A hush fell. He thought he was clever, thought he was forcing me into a speech I didn't want to give. I stood slowly, adjusted my cufflinks, and walked to the front. I didn't take the mic. I didn't need it. "I came here tonight not to be honored," I said, voice level, "but to observe. Because it's important, when you take over a kingdom, to study what poisoned it in the first place." Whispers rippled across the table. "I see ambition in this room, greed, too, and that's fine. It built empires, but it also burns them, fast." I turned to Chase, then Emma.
And when things burn, some people run, others rebuild. Me? I learn. Then I sat. No applause, just stunned silence. After dinner, Emma found me outside by the valet, under the amber light of the portico. You humiliated him again. He handed me the mic. You're enjoying this too much. I haven't even started. She folded her arms. You think this power makes you untouchable. No, I said, it makes me unforgettable. Her eyes hardened. You don't scare me, Noah. You should be scared of what I don't say. She opened her mouth, closed it, then walked away without another word. The next morning, a photo of me at the dinner surfaced online. Noah Parker, silent, alone, and in control. It went viral within hours. But I wasn't watching the likes or reading the comments. I was in my office, looking over internal memos, private communications between Chase and board members, hidden deals, leaked projections, quiet failures. He thought I didn't know. He was wrong. He gave me the company. Now, I'd take his legacy too. The documents weren't supposed to reach me. They were buried under 3 layers of encrypted directories, labeled with vague corporate jargon, Q2 forecast adjustments, deferred liability strategy, internal risk matrix. But I don't miss patterns, especially not patterns that lead to secrets. It started with a line item in the budget flagged by my CFO. A minor expense, just $18,000, billed to a non-existent consulting firm. Normally, it would have slipped through, another drop in a leaky bucket. But I chased it down. And what I found was rot. Chase had been bleeding the company from the inside. Ghost contractors, inflated expense reports, shell accounts routing funds through back doors. He had been siphoning money for over a year before my acquisition, long before he knew I'd ever return. And Emma? Her name was on one of the signatures. I didn't rage. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even speak. I just leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and smiled. They had no idea I was already 10 moves ahead. That afternoon, I called a meeting with my legal team. I want a full forensic audit, I said. Quiet. No leaks. No noise. One of the partners raised an eyebrow. Do you want criminal charges? Not yet. Because if I went legal now, the war would go public. And public meant messy. Right now, I needed silence. I needed leverage. I needed to watch them squirm, thinking they were safe. Then, strike. That night, I received an unexpected visitor, Emma. She arrived at my building, alone, without warning. The doorman buzzed my suite. She says it's urgent. I hesitated for 2 seconds, then told him to let her up. She stepped into the penthouse like she still belonged there, like no time had passed. She wore a slate gray coat, lips pale, eyes tired. She looked less like a trophy and more like a woman unraveling at the seams. What do you know? She asked immediately. Enough, I said. Then you know I didn't authorize those transfers. I raised an eyebrow. But you signed them. He said it was for bonuses, internal incentives. I didn't read the fine print. Still not your strength, I see. Her jaw clenched. I came here to ask you one thing, she said. Don't drag my name through this. You think you can walk in here, ask for mercy, and walk out clean? I think, she looked away, I think part of you still remembers who I was, who we were. I stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. I remember everything, Emma. That's the problem. She stepped closer. I didn't cheat on you. I didn't move. He offered security, a future, and I was tired of scraping by. I didn't think you'd make it. I turned to face her. You didn't think I'd survive without you. She swallowed. Maybe.
We stood there in silence, nothing between us but all the years and damage and words left unsaid. Let me fix this, she whispered. No, I said. You don't fix fire with gasoline. She stepped back, visibly trembling.
Then what happens now? I leaned in just enough for her to feel the cold in my breath. Now I decide what kind of king I want to be. After she left, I sent a single email to my lawyer. Begin phase 2, quietly. Because next, I wasn't just going to expose Chase. I was going to make sure Emma watched him fall, piece by piece, and realize she bet on the wrong man twice. The first domino was a supplier in Singapore. Small, overlooked, but essential. They'd been overcharging Omnitech for 3 years under a sweetheart deal Chase had signed personally, back when the board still trusted him, before my name was even whispered in those halls. I killed the contract with a single call. The supplier panicked. They didn't want legal trouble. They offered full documentation, emails, bank transfers, voice memos. One of those memos? Chase, laughing with a procurement officer over whiskey, bragging how easy it was to hide the payments as market volatility adjustments. I didn't need a smoking gun. I had a recorded confession. The second domino was a whistleblower. She worked in Omnitech HR, quiet, invisible, the kind of woman people dismissed in meetings. But she had folders, logs, screenshots, and the one thing Chase never accounted for, conscience. I didn't offer her money. I offered her protection. By the end of the week, I had everything: a complete timeline of financial misconduct, falsified reports to investors, off-book bonuses to phantom employees. All under Chase's approval. Emma's name appeared less frequently, but enough. Enough to make her sweat. I waited. Because power isn't about rushing, it's about pressure. Let it build. Let them feel the noose tightening, slowly, day by day. The internal audit report landed on Chase's desk Monday morning, sealed, confidential, signed by my legal team. He opened it in his corner office, thinking it was a routine compliance review. He didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the day. That night, he called an emergency meeting with the board. I showed up 10 minutes late, just to watch him sweat. They were all there when I walked in, stiff ties, nervous eyes. Chase stood at the head of the table. Until I entered. Then he sat down. I opened the file folder in front of me, slid copies across the table. Fraudulent expense reports, misuse of corporate funds, evidence of collusion with outside contractors, signed, sealed, time-stamped. Chase's face was pale. You went behind my back. No, I said calmly. I cleaned up your mess. Stanton, the oldest board member, looked over his glasses. Is this verified? It is. Emma sat at the far end of the table. She hadn't said a word. Her face was unreadable. This is absurd, Chase barked. You think you can just waltz in here and stage a coup? No coup, I said. This is a correction. He stood. I built this company. No, I replied. You looted it. I rebuilt it. Stanton turned to the others. A silent vote passed in under 2 minutes. Chase was stripped of executive powers, suspended, pending investigation. His keycard was deactivated before he even left the room. He glared at me as security escorted him out. Emma didn't follow him. She just sat there, frozen. Later that night, I found her waiting in the lobby of my building. I didn't know about the fraud, she said, voice flat. Not really. I knew something was off, but not this. I said nothing. You're going to destroy him. He destroyed himself. I just handed him the mirror. She stepped closer. And what about me? I looked her dead in the eye. I haven't decided yet. That night, I stood at my window again. The city below blinked like a circuit board. Chase was out. The empire was mine.
But something hollow lingered. Not regret, just silence. Because revenge is loud when it starts, but it ends quietly, like a door closing. Chase disappeared. After the board meeting, after the quiet escort out of Omnitech's glass tower, there was no public statement, no press release, just a silence too large to ignore.
He stopped answering calls. His lawyers stalled. His name was scrubbed from internal directories within 48 hours. His parking space was reassigned. Emma stayed. She moved like a shadow now, present in meetings, silent in strategy sessions, floating just behind real decisions. She wore darker clothes, slept in different rooms. No one said it out loud, but the truth echoed through the halls. The kingdom had changed hands, and its queen no longer knew where to stand. I kept my distance, for a while. Not out of mercy, out of calculation. Let her stew in it. Let her feel what it's like to live in the house she helped decorate, now owned by the man she once left behind. But on the 9th day after Chase vanished, I found her in the executive lounge, alone. No makeup, barefaced, hair tied back. She was wearing a navy dress 2 sizes too big, probably one of Chase's old favorites. She looked up when I walked in, then looked away. "I thought you'd be gloating." "I don't need to," I said. "This phase doesn't require celebration, just closure." She laughed bitterly. "Closure, is that what this is?" I poured myself a drink and sat across from her. "Did you ever love him?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. "I loved who he pretended to be. And me?" She met my eyes. "I loved you before you had anything. That scares me more." I studied her. This wasn't the Emma who walked out on me in a pressed white coat and $1,000 heels. This Emma was cracked glass. "You chose him," I said. "I chose comfort," she replied. "Security. I was tired of fighting. You were always a risk. And now? I'm the safest man in the room." She smiled faintly. "Now you're dangerous." The next morning, the first reporter knocked on the door. A leaked memo. A headline. "Disgraced CEO Chase Mallory under internal investigation for fraud." It spread like wildfire. By noon, stock had dipped 5%. By evening, a shareholder lawsuit was being drafted. My legal team was already preparing the official announcement. The media wanted a quote. I gave them one. "Omnitech's future will be built on truth, not illusion. We don't protect corruption, we eliminate it." It was everywhere by morning. But Emma didn't come to work that day. I found her 2 days later, sitting at the edge of the rooftop garden above Omnitech's 40th floor. She didn't look like she was going to jump, but she looked like she'd already fallen into something deep and hard and empty. "You ruined him," she said without looking up. "He ruined himself. You just lit the match." I sat beside her. The wind pushed through her hair like a soft warning. "You think I wanted this?" I asked. She turned. "Didn't you?" I looked at her for a long time. "I wanted to be the man who made you regret leaving. And now that you are, I'm still alone." She reached for my hand. For the first time since she walked out all those years ago, I didn't pull away. We sat like that, hand in hand, surrounded by silence and city lights, both of us buried in the ash of what we used to be. Not lovers, not enemies. Something worse, something real. The silence didn't last long. 3 weeks after Chase Mallory's fall, I received an envelope. No return address, no corporate seal, just my name written in perfect block letters. Inside, photos. Blurry, time-stamped, taken from a distance. Chase, alive, angry, desperate, meeting with a competitor in a hotel lobby. A flash drive was clipped to the back. I plugged it in. The folder contained slides, prototypes, strategic drafts. Some were Omnitech's, some were Erebos. All confidential. Stolen. He wasn't hiding. He was rebuilding. I called an emergency meeting with my executive team.
"He's selling intellectual property," I said, "to Praxis, to TitanCore, anyone who'll listen." One of my CTOs leaned forward. "He has access? He made copies before we locked him out. Legal? Already initiated. But Chase doesn't care about lawsuits. He wants revenge." They looked at me the way generals must look at kings on the eve of war. "So what's the move?" one asked. "We do what he can't." Which is, we go public before he does. That evening, I called a press conference. The skyline glowed behind me. Journalists packed the floor. Cameras rolled. I stood at the podium and did what Chase never had the courage to do. I told the truth.
There are people who will try to tarnish the future we're building here. Former executives, bitter men, thieves dressed in suits. They want to destroy because they can't create. Let them talk. Let them leak. Let them rage. Because while they scream into the dark, we're building something that will outlive them. The internet ate it up. But I knew the storm hadn't passed. It was only gathering. Emma showed up at my door that night. She didn't speak at first. She just handed me a phone. Voicemails, missed calls, messages from Chase. They're turning on me. I need money. Emma, you don't get to choose him again. I handed the phone back. He's unraveling. She nodded. He's dangerous now. I've never seen him like this. I poured a drink. Then we keep the lights on. The next morning, a file was leaked online. An old text thread. Between me and Emma. The one from the week before she left me. Her, you'll hate me when you find out. Me, I already know. I'm just waiting for you to say it. Her, I don't love you enough to stay. They spread like wildfire. Noah Parker's past exposed. The woman who shattered the CEO. Commentators had a field day. Some called me a tragic hero. Others mocked me. A few asked if I still loved her. I said nothing. Because love was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. That night, I sat alone in the penthouse with the lights off. Emma called. I didn't answer. Not out of spite, out of necessity. Because Chase wasn't finished, and neither was I. The hotel was off-grid. No name on the building. Just a black marble lobby and a man with no smile at the front desk. Exactly the kind of place someone like Chase would use to plan his comeback. He thought he was being careful. He wasn't. I had someone inside. They'd been feeding me every meeting, every slide, every deal he tried to pitch. Praxis, TitanCore, even a desperate video call to an offshore fund in Dubai. No one bit. They listened, they nodded, then they forwarded everything to me. I watched the footage alone in my office. Chase pacing in a conference room, hair longer now, disheveled, his tone manic, his eyes sunken. He looked like a man who'd lost everything except his hatred. Emma appeared on screen at one point. He had called her into the meeting, trying to sway her back. She stood against the wall, arms crossed, unmoved. That footage I kept for myself. By week's end, I had what I needed. Proof of IP theft, proof of corporate espionage, proof he tried to sell a Ravos tech under a forged contract. I could have gone straight to the authorities. But that wasn't the kind of justice I wanted. I wanted witnesses. So I set the meeting. He showed up exactly on time. Same hotel lobby, different room, same Chase. He was thinner now, hollow, wearing a suit 2 seasons old and shoes that had lost their shine. He didn't even sit before he started. "You think this is over?" he said. "No," I said, "but you're done pretending it hasn't started. I'll drag you with me. You can try." I tossed a folder onto the table between us. He opened it. Photos, emails, time-stamped memos, one flash drive. He froze. "This is a setup. It's a mirror." He looked up, jaw clenched. "What do you want?" "An audience." "What?"
I want you to admit it. All of it. On camera. He laughed. "You've lost your mind." "No," I said, calmly. "You've lost your freedom." He stood. "You're bluffing." I nodded to the hallway. A pair of lawyers stepped in, and behind them, a federal compliance officer. Chase sat back down. His hands were trembling. "I'm offering you a choice," I said. "Cooperate, confess, or fight and drown." He looked at me like a man staring up from the bottom of a grave he'd just realized he dug himself. "Fine," he whispered. The confession was brief. Clean, coached, legal. But the expression on his face, that was priceless. A man who used to believe the world bent for him, finally understanding it never did. Later that night, I stood at my window. I watched the press conference live on the flat screen behind me. Eravos shares were up 12%. Chase Mallory's face was pixelated in gray. The official statement: a former executive has admitted to violating multiple clauses of his contract and misappropriating proprietary technology.
The company has referred the matter to federal authorities. Emma didn't call. She didn't need to. That night, she showed up at my penthouse. No words, just her in the doorway, tears in her eyes. I didn't say anything. I stepped aside, let her in. Emma didn't sleep in my bed that night. She slept on the couch, curled up in a silk blouse, mascara smudged, knees pulled to her chest like she was bracing for another fall. I stood in the hallway for a long time, just watching her, unsure what was left to say. We had crossed some invisible line, neither lovers nor enemies, just two broken people standing in the ruins of a shared past, both trying to pretend the fire wasn't still burning under their feet. In the morning, I made coffee. She sat at the kitchen island, quiet. "Did you watch it?" she asked. I nodded, twice. "I thought I'd feel better," she said, seeing him finally answer for it. "And?" "I don't. I just feel used, like I was just another asset in his empire." I slid the mug toward her. We both were. She looked at me, tired but clear-eyed. "You think we're even now?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know what even meant anymore. At the office, my assistant handed me a portfolio marked confidential. Inside, a list of Chase's remaining assets, frozen accounts, pending lawsuits, and one curious item: a house in Montauk. It was purchased 2 years ago, quietly, under a trust name, but the name on the original deed transfer? Emma. I called her in. She didn't deny it. "He said it was for us," she said, "a future getaway, somewhere no one could find us. I didn't know he put it under my name. You own it. I don't want it." "Good," I said, "then sell it." She hesitated. "Unless," I paused, "you want to keep a piece of the lie." She stared at me. "I came here because I had nowhere else to go." "You came here," I said, "because I'm the last man who still looks at you like you're real." She blinked. That landed deeper than I expected. That evening, she brought me a manila envelope. Inside, all of Chase's personal journals, ledgers, handwritten notes from his hotel meetings, passwords to private accounts. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked. "Because you're the only one who knows what to do with it." I leaned back in my chair. "You're sure this isn't just revenge?" "It is," she said, "but it's also survival." We didn't talk again until midnight. She was on the balcony, barefoot, wrapped in one of my shirts. "You ever think," she said, "what we could have been if I stayed?" "Every day." "And?" "I think we'd have broken anyway." She turned. "Why?" "Because love doesn't survive when one person doesn't believe in the future." "And now?" I looked at her. Now she was broken in all the places that used to make her untouchable. Now she was here, standing beside me, not as a ghost, not as a liar, but as a woman who had paid for her choices in full. "I don't know what we are anymore," I said. "Then let's start from there." That night, we didn't kiss. We didn't fall into bed. We just sat on the floor, backs against the glass wall, watching the city blink like 1,000 tiny promises we weren't ready to believe yet. But we stayed, and that, for the first time in years, was enough. Emma started coming into the office more frequently. Not with the clipped heels and red-lipped confidence she used to wear like armor, but quieter now, controlled, present. She no longer walked like she owned the room. She walked like she was trying to earn back gravity. And people noticed. Some whispered, others stared. One executive even asked me, half joking, "Is she consulting again or just haunting the place?" I didn't answer, because honestly, I wasn't sure either. Late one afternoon, we were in the executive lounge going over some of the documentation from Chase's private accounts. She slid one file toward me and paused before speaking. "There's something I haven't told you." I looked up. "Then tell me." She swallowed. "The first time he kissed me, I hesitated." I said nothing. "I wasn't in love with him, not really. But I was angry at you. You were always in your head, always chasing something that hadn't been built yet. And I," her voice broke, "I wanted to feel wanted, immediately, fully, and he offered that." "You wanted shortcuts," I said. "I wanted security," she replied. but I didn't realize it came with a price tag. I closed the folder slowly. Why tell me this now? Because if we're going to start over, even as friends, I want you to know I didn't leave you because I stopped loving you. I left because I stopped believing you'd ever choose us over your ambition. She was wrong. But I let her speak. I watched you build an empire out of spite, Noah, and then I watched you rule it like a ghost. I guess I hoped that when Chase fell, you'd come back. I stood up and walked to the window. The skyline looked different that night, or maybe I did. I didn't come back, I said. I just never left. Later, in my office, I pulled up the contract I drafted weeks ago, a clause that removed her from the board entirely, final, legal, cold. But I didn't sign it. Instead, I walked out of my office and found her at the elevator. Dinner, I said. She blinked. Now? No files, no lies, no talk about Chase. She nodded slowly. Okay. We ate at a quiet rooftop place she once said she loved. The waiter didn't recognize us, no paparazzi, no headlines. Just the two of us, drinking wine and eating pasta under warm string lights like the version of ourselves we might have been if the world hadn't broken us. You know, she said, swirling her glass, for a man who's built like ice, you still order the same wine. Some things don't change, I said. Do you wish they had? I looked at her, really looked, past the mistakes, past the betrayal, past the empire and the ashes and the lawsuits. No, I said, not if it brought me back here. She didn't smile. She just reached across the table and took my hand. No drama, no fanfare, just fingers finding fingers in the dark. Later that night, back at the penthouse, she stood in the doorway to my bedroom. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. I'm asking for a beginning. You already got one. She tilted her head. When? I nodded toward the door she hadn't yet crossed. When you chose to stay. She stepped inside. And for the first time since the day she left me, I let her. The next morning wasn't filled with passion or poetic redemption. It was quiet, simple, real. Emma woke before me and stood at the window wrapped in one of my shirts, watching the sun crawl over the skyline like it was something she hadn't seen in years. She didn't speak until I joined her. I don't know how to be this version of myself, she said softly. You don't have to be anything, I replied. You just have to be honest. She looked at me. I don't deserve that kind of grace. Maybe not, I said, but that's what makes it real. In the days that followed, the headlines shifted again. The SEC formally opened an investigation into Chase's offshore dealings. More companies came forward with evidence. An anonymous tip, one I may or may not have submitted, brought his Dubai fund into question. His name became a stain. Mine became a standard. But power wasn't intoxicating anymore. Now it was responsibility. Emma started working again, not at Omnitech. She volunteered at a youth coding nonprofit downtown. She didn't announce it. She didn't post about it. She just showed up 3 days a week and taught kids how to build futures from broken machines. The first time I saw her there, hunched beside a 12-year-old girl trying to fix a line of JavaScript, I realized something. She wasn't running from her past anymore. She was building something beyond it. That night, we sat on the couch in silence, sipping wine, a laptop between us as we reviewed Erebos' next merger proposal. You know, she said, scrolling through the pitch deck, you never did answer my question. What question? If I'd stayed, would it have worked? I closed the laptop gently. Maybe, or maybe we would have just broken slower. She nodded. And now? Now we know how things break, and how not to break them again. The phone buzzed. It was a call from a news outlet, another request for a quote about Chase's indictment. I declined, because it didn't matter anymore. He had become a footnote in a story that wasn't his to narrate. Emma leaned her head against my shoulder. You don't need to punish me anymore, she whispered. I know, I said. She looked up at me. Then why are you still so distant sometimes? I thought for a long time. Because I'm still deciding if this version of you is real. She didn't flinch. I understand. And she did. That was the difference. She didn't beg. She stayed. By the end of the week, the Erebos board approved a historic expansion plan. We'd be launching in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and parts of Europe. The company was thriving, but my mind wasn't on projections or profit margins. It was on the woman beside me, and the strange peace of building something together. Again, not from lust or ambition, but from mutual wreckage. That night, I wrote something in my private journal, a habit I had long ago buried, now returned. She burned me, and I burned her. But here we are, standing in the smoke, still breathing, still here. Maybe that's what survival really is. Two people choosing to try again, without forgetting who lit the match. 1 year later. Omnitech no longer existed, at least not in the way the world remembered. Its name was retired, quietly folded into Erebos Global Systems. The old branding was erased, its legacy archived in a digital tomb that no one would visit. Chase Mallory's photo was long gone from every office wall, every annual report, every corner of the internet we could legally clean. In his place, my face, my name, my empire. Emma and I never made a public announcement. There was no press release, no "we're back together" interview. We didn't need one. She still lived in her own apartment across the river. But some nights, most nights, she was with me. Not as a possession, not as a project, just as herself. And I let her.
That morning, I stood on the balcony of my newest acquisition, a seaside campus in Portugal, where Erebos would launch its European AI hub. Wind in my suit, salt on my skin, a view worth fighting for. Emma joined me with 2 coffees in hand. She handed me one, leaned against the railing. "You ever miss it?" she asked. "What?" "The man you were, before all this." I took a sip and looked out across the water. "I don't miss him," I said, "but I respect him. He broke so I could exist." She nodded slowly. "I think about her too, the version of me who thought love was a transaction." I looked at her. "It wasn't your worst mistake." "No? No. Your worst mistake was underestimating me." She smiled. "You always had it in you." "No," I said. "You were the reason I had to find it." That night, we sat in the sand long after the team dinner ended. Just the 2 of us, barefoot, the sea dark and endless before us. "I used to think revenge would feel like a trophy," I said. "And now? It feels like silence, like winning by being too far ahead for them to catch up." She reached for my hand. "Do you think we'll ever be normal?" she asked. "No," I said, "but we'll be real." She exhaled, and the ocean carried her breath away. The next morning, I gave my final speech of the quarter. Hundreds of employees, dozens of cameras, shareholders, journalists, interns wide-eyed with ambition. I didn't talk about profits or projections. I talked about scars. Some of the best builders I know learned to construct their lives from what others left in rubble. They weren't born lucky. They were born with nothing, and used that to build something no one could take. The applause didn't feel like validation anymore. It just felt like air. Necessary, but not the point. Later, back in the penthouse, Emma placed something on my desk. A photograph. Us. From the 4. Faded, young, smiling on a rooftop with plastic champagne flutes and a string of paper lanterns behind us. "Keep it?" she asked. I looked at it for a long time. "No," I said. She blinked. "Let's take a new one." She smiled. And for the first time in years, I did too.